Welcome back. All right, now, so Donald Trump has doubled down on his plan to put a temporary ban on Muslims from entering our country until we get a clear picture of who is coming in. He is refusing to back down when it comes to profiling Muslims.
Well, I think profiling is something that we're going to have to start thinking about as a country, and other countries do it. And you look at Israel and you look at others, and they do it, and they do it successfully. And, you know, I hate the concept of profiling, but we have to start using common sense, and we have to use, we have to use our heads.
Trump added that mosques should be looked at closely, just like in other countries who were serious about guarding against terror.
How do you respectfully check a mosque?
Well, you do as they used to do in New York prior to this mayor dismantling. By the way, if you go to France right now, they're doing it in France. In fact, in some instances, they're closing down mosques. People don't want to talk about it. People aren't talking about it.
Joining me now to discuss this is Sultan. He is a counterterrorism consultant. Also with us here in studio is Thomas Ruskin. He's a former NYPD detective investigator. And across from me, staying with us from the beginning of the show, is Charmaine Yoest. She's a former Reagan advisor. All right, so, sir, I'm going to go to you first, considering you're the person with the policing background. How important is profiling?
In certain instances, it's very important. If you do it at the airport, you do it the way the Israelis do it with El Al, it's very important. What Ray Kelly did as police commissioner is he sent undercovers not only into mosques but other places to try and determine if there was any reason to believe that that mosque or something that was happening would be of an intelligence nature or a threat to New York City.
I've had many people on this show before. I mean, one of them is Brigitte Gabrielle, right? Says that what they're teaching in the mosques, in most of these mosques, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, I don't know what number it is, but it's more than 5 out of 10, are teaching very negative, anti-American sort of messages. And we've seen it just last week. Greta Van Susteren from Fox News interviewed the imam from down in Orlando, and he's saying, yeah, we believe in stoning women to death, and any woman should not be president because what about if she's on a menstrual cycle and she hits the button? I mean, this is the sort of stuff being taught.
Listen, if you're putting undercover police officers or detectives into places, mosques or anywhere else, and you're learning intelligence or a potential plot against the city or any other metropolitan area, that is valuable intelligence that can be used by law enforcement. If you find nothing, all right, so the officer did 8 hours, 20 minutes in a mosque as his tour, and it's done.
Obviously, you don't agree with this?
I think the challenge that you have is there has not been significant data gleaned from these programs. I mean, domestic CVE programs that don't engage the American Muslim community tend to alienate them. And what we've seen historically over the course of the Bush administration and now going into the Obama administration is that 70% plus of potential terrorist actors, of these lone wolves, are identified by the Muslim community themselves. So I think there needs to be some sort of collaboration in order to make this effective. And then longer term, look at what Haaretz wrote yesterday. The bigger problem that you have is if this profiling goes into place the way the Israelis are doing it, everybody coming in, Muslim or non-Muslim, is getting a terror ranking from 1 to 6. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want your civil rights eroded across the board?
But see, what we're missing here in your statistics, which are very, very knowledgeable and valuable, is the 30%. When you say that the mosques are giving up 70%, we're missing 30%.
That's right.
And that's what I have to depend on law enforcement, as someone who served in that capacity, to get right every single day. Because otherwise I have a Faisal Shahzad coming into Times Square, a lone wolf, trying to detonate himself, potentially killing thousands of people, if not killing thousands of people, injuring thousands of people, killing hundreds. That's what law enforcement has to get right every day. And I can't depend on an imam or someone in that mosque or anywhere else to give that person up.
Well, and the problem that we have and why Americans feel so insecure is all of us have been at the airport and seen the little old lady in the walker being given a full frisk pat down. That's why there is a happy medium, a common sense approach to this, where you're searching the people who are coming from areas that are known to harbor terrorists.
I want to go, because you have the experience of working with Huckabee and Reagan. You know, I listen to Trump and I hear him talk about the ban on Muslims, and there's nobody who wants the investigations more than myself. I like the idea of the profiling, to be quite honest. If I fit the measure of something, if they're looking for a guy who's 6 foot with brown hair and, you know, stayed in the sun too long, do all you have to do if you think it's going to save somebody's life. The problem I have with Trump right now is that he continues to bang this ban on Muslims drum, and it's coming out wrong. If we were to just shrink down the amount of people we're taking in this country, catch our breath, and be able to do better background checks, that's the message that will resonate. It seems like he keeps on hitting the drum to guys who are already on his side. He's got to start pulling some of these independents in.
Well, when he talks about targeting areas and countries that are harboring terrorists, everybody says that's the common sense approach. It's when he starts talking about Muslims and kind of painting that big, broad brush that people start to feel uncomfortable, because we all have friends who are Muslim.
And when he goes back after the attack in Orlando and says, see, if I had banned his father years ago, he wouldn't have been here. This is a guy who grew up in the United States, who somehow became radicalized. I think it's more important we understand how this person became radicalized and try and cut that off, versus stopping his father years ago from being welcomed into the United States. Because obviously, eventually, you know, looking back, we were all immigrants at one time.
Right, but at the same time, I want to read out a story that's just taking place today. Okay, it's about a little girl. She's 5 years old. She's special needs. She's from Idaho. She's out, so I'm going to read from the paper because we don't have it anywhere else. The little girl was playing outside Thornbrook apartment buildings when the boys put a knife to her throat and forced her inside a laundry unit. She was then stripped naked, raped, and urinated on. The 13-year-old reportedly told the younger boys, who were, by the way, 8 and 10, to urinate on her because they were incapable of ejaculating. Here's the part I haven't told you yet. You ready? These 3 boys are Syrian refugees.
We've been made aware of a situation, an alleged assault of a minor child, and we can't get any information on it. Apparently, it's been indicated that the perpetrators were 4 Muslim youth. I'm just alerting you to the facts that if you don't get your head wired to your posterior, you folks are going to be with a mic in front of your face trying to answer questions about Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, and you're going to act like a bunch of morons because you don't have a clue as what's going on in this community.
So it's starting already. Everybody has warned about it. We don't want these refugees in here, and this is what we get.
I think the challenge that you have to look at is who are, again, this goes back to what you're talking about, a filtering process. Okay, the filtering process that we have right now is perhaps not a best. But I've already talked about this on your show several times. We work with Amalia. They're based in Israel. The big thing we're talking about is create a safe zone in southern Syria. Okay, you've got different cultures, you've got different issues that you have to deal with. There's acclimatization, and most of these kids have been through several years worth of war, okay? So they've seen their parents blown apart, they've seen the horrors of war, they've seen the raping of ISIS. You have to reculturalize them if you're going to bring them in.
I don't want to bring them in. I just don't want to bring them in. I don't want to bring them in.
Americans are the most compassionate people in the world, and so when we hear stories about refugee children, we want to take them in. But there is this common sense approach where you don't end up with stories like this. This is why Americans don't trust their government right now, because we're frisking little old ladies at the airport, but we are allowing refugees who come from dangerous areas in, and Americans don't feel like we have a system that's working. It's clearly broken.
Explain to me the value that we get as Americans for bringing these people into our country. Just give me the value. What are they offering?
I can't answer it.
Come on, you're a smart guy.
I have no idea. I think that, again, to Oz's point, you have to have a filtration system to determine who's coming into your country and make sure that they're properly vetted.
It is a core, fundamental American value. Give us your tired, your poor, those yearning to be free. That resonates with us as a people, and that's something we're always going to want to hang on to. That's why we have to fix our system so that we can safely bring in those who truly need our help and leave out the dangerous ones.
But why do we have to bring in everybody who needs our help? You know how many people, Charmaine, need our help? There are billions of people who aren't even making 10 cents a day. They can't eat. They got bugs all over them. You see the commercials everywhere. We need to be bringing in people who are going to enrich this country.
Dennis, we bring in enough H-1B visas, enough O visas, we bring in EB-5 visas. We have tremendous amounts of people who are are building this country. I mean, most of the big buildings in Brooklyn are going up through EB5 deals right now. The big thing we have to look at is we are saying the same things we said about the Irish, that we said about the Italians, that we said about the Slovaks. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, okay? We've heard these stories before. The challenge that you have is we have these global conflicts. We are the leader in the world, and in order to retain that leadership role, we are going to have to deal with refugees. We're just going to have to make sure, as you know, we've been talking about, that there's a method by which it's effective to filter them.
And then we monitor the people who are here, who crossed the radar of law enforcement and other agencies to make sure that those people aren't up to something. We have to build up the Joint Terrorist Task Force. We have to build up our immigration system, as Oz has said, and then we have to do what we talked about last Friday, how I was coming through Dallas and that dog targeted 2 Muslim women, and the dog had no filtration system.
Who monitored these 3 kids who just came in? Because let me tell you something.
Well,
if
someone
this
brought
was
them in.
Tommy, you know how you and I will agree on 99% of the stuff. If I was just reading a story, God forbid, about your daughter, you wouldn't be talking to me about this. No, you wouldn't.
They wouldn't be alive.
They wouldn't be alive.
They
Thank
wouldn't
you
be
very
alive.
much. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the perspective of what this father is saying right now. Why do we need these 3 people in here? And the fact of the matter is, we
how
don't.
did they get in?
We don't need them. We don't need them. And you know what else we don't need? We don't need those construction workers, wherever it is that you're talking about. Because for every single one of those visas you're going to show me, I'm going to bring you out 5 Americans who used to be in construction, and they're not in construction anymore
those
because
construction visas, those are investment visas.
My apologies.
That puts
but
up
I'm
the
still
building.
right. I'm still right. Because for every construction site you go to, you'll find illegal aliens, you'll find people here on visas, you'll find the H-1B visas you're talking about in Silicon Valley, and you'll find displaced American workers in every single situation.
Look at Mr. Trump and look at what he has in terms of his employment history, okay? If we're going to balance the books, we need to balance the books starting at home.
All right, but at the same point, I don't want to switch to Trump. My point is we don't need these people. We'll be back.